Okay, quick recap what all things we discussed yesterday. We learned about cloud computing. Then after that, we discuss advantages of computing, models, which are your public, private, hybrid, community, and your multi-cloud environment. Other than this, we discussed about your services, which are present over your cloud, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. So these were the things we discussed, and last part was your virtualization. So these were the things which we discussed yesterday: your cloud computing advantages, models around your cloud, your services which are there around your cloud, and your virtualization. Now we will start with your containers. Okay, so a quick recap that what all things we discussed regarding your virtualization, right? So virtualization is a ability to run multiple operating systems on a single machine. Okay, and we will be sharing the resource of your single machine to run all those operating system with the help of a hypervisor. So yesterday we learned this thing with the example of your VMware, that how we were able to run multiple operating system where your hypervisor was your VMware and host operating system was your Windows 11. Your guest operating systems were your Android, your Linux, and Windows XP. Okay, so all these three operating systems were in a separate sandbox environment which were not communicating with each other, and they were using the resources which are present on my machine. Okay, they were using my hardware resources. That is your virtualization. Now comes your container. Okay, that why we created your containers. Okay, yesterday we discussed that when we were talking about cloud, we were discussing that we were creating an organization. So let's say this is our organization, and this is for a e-commerce website. This particular organization is for a e-commerce website. Okay, so there will be multiple departments, right? So under this particular department, let's say we have your developers who will develop different services that are present on my e-commerce website. Then we will have your production, your testing, all these departments. Let's say I gave a task to this particular developer department that they want to create a particular service. Okay, they want to create a particular application for my e-commerce website. The developers of my organization needs to create this particular application. Okay, so let's say this particular sandbox environment is for a particular developer. Okay, so let's say this is for your developer. This particular sandbox environment is, let's say, for your tester, and this is for your production team. Okay, now under this particular environment, developer created an application which was running fine, and it was according to the needs which I presented to this particular developer. Okay, now once the application has been created, what developer did, it transferred the code, it transferred the source code of this particular application to your testing department or either to your production department. Okay, now when your testing department or your production department tried to run this particular application on their machines, okay, on their systems, it was not working. So on this particular machine it was not working, on this particular machine it was not working. Okay, so these two departments again went back to your developers and they said that, see, whatever source code you have sent, that thing is not working on our system. So at that time your developer said that on my machine it is working. Okay, so when we create the application, there are certain things which we want to see, and we want to match all those things within our organization. Okay, so let's say if I'm creating an application, first of all I have to select a particular framework. Okay, other than your programming language, I have to select a framework. Then I have to select some library files, what library files I'm using while creating this particular application. Also the versions of these libraries, what type of version I'm using, right? Is it the latest one or is it the previous one, right? Then it will have some dependencies. There will be some major changes according to operating system also, right? Because here we are working over your Android operating system, right? So might be it might not work around your Linux part because of some operating system features. Okay, so that is why we created your container. Okay, now what this particular container does, now what this developer will do, it will create multiple images. What is this particular developer will do, it will create multiple images with different framework, different libraries and version, and it will store it in a container engine. Okay, let's say this is my version 1 or image 1, this is my version 2 or image 2, or this is my version 3 or image 3. Now according to the need of your user, they can select the image and they can run it on their system. That is your container. Okay, so when we define your container, containers are nothing, they will be hosted on the top of your physical infrastructure. They will be hosted, or it will be placed on the top of your physical server or your infrastructure and your host operating system. Okay, so here we are not having hypervisor, instead we are having a container engine which will be depending on the operating system's kernel binaries. Okay, so whatever binaries, kernel binaries or your libraries are present on this particular framework or this particular operating system, this container engine will be depending on it. So that is why we don't need any operating system over here. No separate operating system needed over here. We will simply create the image, and that image will contain some different framework, different libraries, different versions of those libraries, different dependencies, and different level of your operating systems. Now according to the need of your user, these users can select any image and they can download or they can install it from this particular container engine. Okay, so standard definition of your containers will be, container is a package. Okay, since it is having different image, so what we are saying, container is a package which will include, okay, container is a package, we can say, of a application or a software, because we are creating image of a application or a particular software. Okay, so container is a package of an application or a software which will include all the dependencies such as your library files, your configuration files, your binaries, and all the other resources which are required to create a particular application or a software. Okay, so here this particular container will contain different images of a single application. Okay, now the most famous container is your Docker. The most famous container engine is your Docker engine. Now when we talk about Docker, or when we want to define Docker, what Docker is, now since anyone can access Docker, okay, any user can access the images available at your Docker engine. So Docker is an open source. Docker is an open source technology which will be used for developing, packaging, and running your applications and all the dependencies that are required to create your application in the form of a container. Okay, so this particular Docker will contain all the different application images in the form of container. Okay, so when you look at this particular Docker architecture, you can see this is your Docker host, which is your daemon. Okay, it will have some containers, and each container will have different images. This is your client, and at the right side you have your Docker registry. Okay, now we have three features: build, pull, and run. Okay, when you want to pull some image from your Docker host, you will be using pull command. When you want to build some image around your Docker host, we will be using build. And when we want to run the image which is present on your Docker, then we will be using run. Okay, so with Docker we have three commands: pull, build, and run. This is what Docker is. Okay, so Docker is nothing but a container technology, open source container technology, which will contain all the application images. Then comes your next part, which is your microservices. Okay, now to understand microservices, we have to again move back to your e-commerce organization or your e-commerce website. When I was creating an e-commerce website, I have to add lot of services. Okay, I have to add lot of services to this particular website. Okay, there will be one service which will be, let's say, depending on your cart, what all things you are adding to your cart. Then we can say there will be one service where we will be talking about your payment function. Then we can add your ordering system service, how user will order different products from this particular website. Okay, then your catalog design, what all things will be present on this particular website. Okay, there will be a web server which will be hosting all this particular data, right? There will be load balancer which will be balancing the traffic coming for different services. Okay, so when we create a particular e-commerce website, right, in our case e-commerce website, we have to add a lot of services to make this website function. To make this website function, we have to add lot of services. Now managing all these services for a single person is very difficult. So what we will do, I will divide each service into a particular section. I will divide each service into a particular function or a particular section. These sections are called your microservices. Okay, these sections will be called your microservices. So what I'm doing, this is my single application. This application is having 5 services, 5 different services. So I'm calling these macro services, yeah, these subpart of a single service, your microservice. Now, how this thing will be helpful with your container? Okay, now this particular team can upload all the images in a single container. A team, this particular team will upload all the images on this particular container. Like this, we will be adding all the images for different microservice around a container. Okay, now this is your container 4, container 3, container 2, and container 1. This is your microservice 1, M2, M3, and M4. Now problem here is, right now we have only 4 services in this example, but what if I have 50 services? Okay, what if I have 50 services? The chain goes on, and I have reached till M50. So here we will have different container engines. Okay, so again we will be till C50. Now to manage these 50 containers is very difficult. Okay, to manage all these containers, all the functionality of single container is very difficult. So what we did, we introduced something new. Okay, we introduced something which can manage all these containers at a single interface. At this particular interface, I can manage all these things. This particular interface is called your container orchestration. This particular single interface will be called your container orchestration. Okay, which will help me to manage all the containers. Okay, so when we move to your container orchestration part, container orchestration is nothing. It is a automated process which will help me to manage the life cycle of your software containers and their dynamic environment. Okay, so container orchestration again is an automated process which will help me to manage the life cycles of your containers. So this thing is managing containers and its environment. So using this particular single interface, what all things we can do? We can do scaling, provisioning, deployment, configuration, availability, security, health monitor, your load balancing, and your resource allocation. Okay, so these are your automated tasks which you can do with the help of your container orchestration. Okay, now the service which we generally use is your Kubernetes. The container orchestration service which we generally use, and the most famous one is your Kubernetes. Kubernetes was developed by your Google. Okay, it was developed by your Google created this particular thing so that we can manage different containerized application. Okay, so this was the need for creating your Kubernetes, and this is what your Kubernetes is also. Kubernetes is also a platform which provides you automate tasks for managing your containers. Now we look at this particular part, how you will be deploying your Kubernetes. Here you can see this is your Docker. So let's say this is your container one. This is your container two, container engine two, your container engine three. Under this particular container, we have sub containers, right? So this is your C3 one, this is your C3 two. And all these container engines are maintained by a single interface, which is your Kubernetes or your container orchestration. So this is all about your containers and your container orchestration. Then comes your different platforms which we have for your this is for your container management platform. Okay, so famous one, your Docker, which is an open source. Other than Docker, we have your Amazon Elastic Container Service, your ECS for AWS. Okay, we have your Azure Container Service for your Azure. We have, other than that, your Red Hat OpenShift Container Platform, your Portainer, and your Rancher. So these are some of your container management platform where you can upload your different images, and over your microservice you can manage it. Then we have your Kubernetes platform or your container orchestration platform. Famous one is your Kubernetes, again, which is an open source container orchestration engine. Other than that, we have for your AWS, your DKS, Docker Kubernetes service, which is given by your Docker. Okay, Knative, IBM Cloud Kubernetes Service, Google Kubernetes Engine given by your GCP, and Azure Kubernetes Service, your AKS given by your Microsoft. Okay, so these are some of your Kubernetes platform. Moving forward, just a sec. Yeah, okay. Now, next and last service or your technology is your serverless computing. Okay, serverless computing, think of it as task which you will create, for a particular period only. Okay, or for a particular timeline. Okay, now real time example, right? If we want to link a real time example with this particular serverless computing, think of it as your Windows updates. Okay, here what you will do, you will set a task that on every Wednesday at, let's say, 4 p.m. your computer should automatically update if there are some updates pending. This is the task which you have created. Now, every Wednesday at 4 p.m., this task will automatically execute. Okay, at this particular timeline, or at this particular period, this particular task will automatically execute. Same is your serverless computing. Okay, here what we will do, we will create some functions in our code, in our source code, or whatever code you are creating for your organization. We will create some certain functions. These functions will only perform when a particular period comes on when they are called. Okay, these functions will only perform when either a particular timeline comes for what they have been set, or when they are called for. So serverless computing allows to build and run applications without thinking about servers. Okay, so these functions will not be present over your platform. These functions will not present either on your platform or on your servers. These functions will be present on your cloud. So whenever the time comes, they will be requested from this particular cloud, and they will execute their function over there. Automatically provisions, scales, manages, and maintains the infrastructure required to run the code. Okay, so all these things are totally depending or totally responsible for your cloud vendor. User have to do nothing with the infrastructure of these functions. All these things will be responsible, taken care by your cloud vendor. Okay, so few of the resources available for your Azure is, one is Azure function, which is again a serverless computing or function as a service, and other one is your Azure Logic app. This is again a function as a service software. Okay, so serverless computing is nothing task task or functions which you create in your code, and they will only be called when a particular period comes. Whatever period or timeline you have set for that function, they will only be called, and they will be stored over your cloud platform. They will not be stored over your servers, they will be stored over your cloud platform. This is your serverless computing. So if we look at some of the famous serverless computing framework, one of them is your Azure functions, right? Right now only we discussed about Azure functions. Other than that, we have your AWS Lambda, Google Cloud Functions, IBM Cloud Functions, AWS Fargate, and your Alibaba Cloud Function Compute. Okay, so these are the frameworks which are present for your function as a service. One more thing, when we talk about your container, okay, when we want to say container as a service, for what it will be byproduct of. Okay, so here, since we are depending on the operating system present by the host, all the dependencies and libraries present by the operating system, so container as a service is a byproduct of platform as a service. Okay, remember this thing, container as a service is a byproduct of platform as a service, because here we are simply running our application, which is either your container engine or images present on this particular container engine. We are not worried about the infrastructure beneath the container engine. So container as a service is a byproduct of your platform as a service. Okay, now let's see how we can create a machine, okay, a virtual machine over your Azure cloud. Okay, so what we will do, we will try to create a Windows server. Okay, we will try to create a Windows server over your Azure cloud. Now, looking at this particular portal, this is your dashboard. Okay, here you can see different by default Azure services coming, create a resource groups, cost management, quick start center, right, app service, your storage accounts. Then if you want to navigate your subscriptions, resource groups, all resources present over here, tools which are present, cost management, if you want to see what all, how you can manage your cost for the services which are running over your cloud. Okay, monitoring service is also present over the Azure. At the left side, if you see, different options are there, right? These are some of the favorite services which I have placed over here, right? So according to your need, what all services you require, you can change it over here, right? At the right side, right top side, you have your Azure shell. Okay, here if you are good with bash scripting or PowerShell scripting with Azure, you can create a resource through that also. Okay, so both the things are possible. You can create a resource with the help of your scripting also, and with the help of your user interface also. Then we have different portal settings, right? So we have your directory and subscriptions, appearance, how you want your dashboard, right? Whether you want it in a dark theme or a blue theme, right? Light theme. Then we have your startup views, how do you want, right? So it is all regarding to that. Then we have your language and region. So according to your region, you can set the language, right? In what language you want to access this particular portal, my information, signing out and notification, all this sort of things regarding your portal. This is your feedback, supporting and troubleshoot. If you want to troubleshoot any service which is not working, you can do it from here, right? If you need support from your customer service, you can get it from here. Here is your feedback. If you want to write any feedback regarding any service, you can write it over here. And this is your account info. So what we will do, we will look at some different places. Right now, what we will do, we will simply create a resource, right? Resource means we are trying to create a virtual machine. So virtual machine is a resource for Azure. So we will simply click on create a resource. Okay. Now here you can see I have a lot of resources present, and these are the categories present for your resources. Okay. These are some of the popular Azure services which people generally use. This thing is popular products around your marketplace. Okay, so if you want to look at the marketplace where you can find any resource, okay, this is the place. At this particular marketplace you can search for any particular resource and it will be available over here. So when we go back and look at the categories present for creating a resource, we have your AI and ML, analytics, blockchain, compute, containers, IT management tools, mixed reality, networking, security, right? Different categories are there. So according to your resource, you can select a category also, and you can surf it through that. So what we will do, we will try to create a Windows server. Okay, we will try to create a Windows Server 2019 data center. So I will simply click on this Windows Server 2019 data center. Okay, so now create a virtual machine. This is the option. So right now what we are doing, we are creating a virtual machine. This is basic details which we need to fill for creating a particular virtual machine. Okay, so subscription, whatever subscription you have purchased around your Azure portal, select that one, that from which particular subscription you want to pay for this particular virtual machine. Okay, now comes under subscription your resource group. Resource group is nothing. Let's say, for example, if I am having 10 resources, or I am having, let's say, 3 departments in my organization, department A, department B, department C. Okay, department A is having 5 virtual machines, B is having 2 virtual machines, and C is having 6 virtual machines. Okay, now these virtual machines are called your resource. Okay, now when your admin wants to access a particular virtual machine, or out of total, right, if I talk about total, it will be around 30 virtual machines. If out of these 13 total machines, if my admin wants to get to know about a particular or specific virtual machine, which is your X, how he will search around 13? So what we did, for every department we created a resource group. For every department, what we did, we created a resource group. Now under this resource group, I am having 5 virtual machines. Under this, I am having 2, and under this, I am having 6. Now this admin can simply shortlist its search from your resource group A. Now all the virtual machines present on this particular A will be available to your admin. Okay, so this is the concept of your resource group. So here what we'll do, we will create a new resource group and we will name it, let's say, bootcamp. So let's create a new and let's name it cloud bootcamp. Okay, so this is the name of my resource group. Then we have to give a name of this particular virtual machine. So let's name it data center. Okay, I'm naming it data center. Now comes your region. Region is data center which you want, where this virtual machine should be placed. Okay, so there will be different regions. Now according to your country, choose your region, so that when we are creating an organization, we have to look at the compliance rules also. We have to look at the country's compliance rule. So just to meet that thing, we will be simply working around the region which is present around my country. So if we look at the regions available at this particular Azure, we have West US, Switzerland North, UAE North, right, Australia, Japan, West India, just a sec. Okay, Canada, UK, all these regions are present. So what I will do as of now, I will select East US. Okay, I'm simply selecting a region, East US. Okay, now comes the option of availability zone. Okay, availability zone is your backup data center. Availability zone is your backup data center, which will be placed around 300 kilometer far from your East US data center. Okay, so that in case of any disaster on this particular region, I should be transferred all the service to this particular data center. Okay, so availability zone is present on East US. So what we will do, we will check for that thing, and if you want to spend more, you can select that particular zone. Okay, so availability zone, virtual machine skill set, availability set. So as of now, zone 1 we are going by default, no changes over here. Okay, then comes your security type. what all security you want around your virtual machine. Okay, so standard, the basic level of security, trusted launch virtual machines. Okay, which will be again having a advanced security around your virtual. So right now I have to pay for this one, so I'm simply going with the standard one since we are creating a virtual only, and just to save the cost also. So security time, going with the standard. Image we already selected, which is your Windows Server 2019 data center. Now if you browse, you can use multiple image also. Okay, if let's say I decided and change my mind to Ubuntu, so I can select this one, and now my server will be Ubuntu server. So as of now we will be going with Windows Server. Then comes your size. What size image you want in this particular virtual machine. Okay, right now by default it has selected standard DS1V2, which is having one CPU, 3.5 gig memory, and which is costing me around 6k per month. Okay, 6k NIR it is costing me per month. If I look at all the size according to my need, I can select that. Okay, according to my need, I can select different sizes. Okay, there will be different series. See, D series is your recommended for general purpose needs. B series is when you do not need continuous CPU performance. Okay, F series is when you want to 2x performance boost for your vector processing, right? So according to your need, there are different series. Okay, now let's say we went with E series. Okay, fourth generation E family size for high memory needs. So let's go with this particular series. Here you will have different versions. Okay, one is with two virtual CPUs, 16 gig RAM, data disk present on this particular image is 4, maximum input output is around 3200, temporary storage which I will be getting is around 32 GB, and it will be costing me around 11k INR. Okay, so maximum which will be costing us is around 45k. Okay, 45k NIR. This is the machine which is having two CPUs, 64 gig of RAM. Okay, your 16 data disk, around 1 to 800 input output memory at 300 GB. So let's go with this one. Okay, this particular machine is costing me around 22k. So let's select this one and select. So this will be costing me 22,000 INR per month. Then comes your administrative account. So simply I will create the account over this virtual machine. Let's say, let's name it cloud. Password, let's give it something which is acceptable by this particular. Okay, so this password is acceptable by your Azure. So again, re-verifying. Okay, okay. Account has been set. I have given a username cloud, password is set. Now comes your inbound port rules. Okay, so you can select none if you don't want to set any port rules over there, or you can select a RDP. Okay, I will go with the RDP connection because I want to get the instance of this particular machine as a remote desktop protocol. Okay, your RDP. So this RDP will allow all IP address to access your virtual machine. Okay, but since I have not set any HTTP port, okay, what will happen? No one can access the web server other than me. Okay, right now I'm simply setting a simple RDP port rule that I want to access this particular machine over your port RDP, which is 3389. This is my inbound port rule. Licensing, I'm not going with the existing because I don't have one. So I will simply go skip this part. Next, disk selected by default premium SSD. No changes over here. Right? We are simply going with the by default things. Networking, A virtual network will be created for me with the name Cloud Bootcamp Virtual Net. A subnet will be created with 10.0.0./24. Public IP, data center IP. IP will be given to me. Network security group will be assigned to me to my virtual machine, which is basic. Public inbound rules all allow selected ports, which is your RDP. Load balancing, none, because I don't have too much traffic over my virtual machine, so no load balancing options. But if you have a lot of traffic over your machines, you can go with Azure load balancer or your application gateway. So as of now, none. Management part, how you will be managing your machine. Okay, so monitoring, boot diagnostic, I will disable this thing because I don't want that every time I start this machine it should diagnose. By default everything is selected, so no changes over here. Advanced tags, okay, we will discuss what tags are later down the line. Right now, no, not creating any tags. Review and create. Now you can see it over here. When I'm getting product detail. Product detail is coming on hourly basis. Okay, I was getting the price around 22K per month, but here I'm getting the product detail in your per hour basis. So for the number of hours I will be using this particular machine, my cost will be multiplied with this particular number. Okay, if I'm using the machine with for 10 hours within a month, okay, these things will be happening within a month. So for 10 hours in a month I will be charged 31 into 10. This much amount I will be charged for my users of this machine. So this is again one of the added advantage of your Azure, that you are paying only for the number of hours you are using this machine. Simply clicking on create. It will take a minute or two for Azure to create your virtual machine. Right? Once it is created, you will be redirected to the resource group, and right now not saving the password, don't save. See, deployment is in progress, and over the notification section also you can see deployment is in progress. So as soon as the deployment will be completed, you will get a notification for that. It will hardly take a minute or two to do all these things. Okay, see, by default we only went with the virtual machine. Okay, but it is creating some additional resources also which will be required to run this particular machine. A virtual network is created, IP is created, your network group is created, security group, your network interface NIC card is also created for this particular machine. Okay, so these are by default resources coming with this virtual machine. You are not creating them. Okay, your deployment is complete. Let's go to the resources. And this is our resource group, cloud bootcamp, status running, location, subscription, your subscription ID, availability zone 1, operating system Windows, size, the size which we selected, public IP, this is the IP. Okay, so using this IP I can access this particular machine. Virtual network subnet, virtual cloud bootcamp virtual net, which is created by default. DNS name I have not still configured. This is the properties of this particular machine, right? uh, Networking info, IP is given, your private IP is also given over here. Okay, so right now we are accessing this thing as a public IP, so we can convert this virtual machine as a private also. So at the time this will be the IP used for that. Availability plus scaling, security type, standard, Azure spot, dusk. Okay, so these are the basic details of this particular machine. If you look at the monitoring part also, you will see all the uses of this particular machine. So right now, since we have not started this machine, so over the monitor part, we are getting zero info. Okay, capabilities, what all things you can set over here, right? You can set a Azure policy. You can check for Windows Admin Center. You can add your security, auto shutdown, updates, disaster recovery. You can configure all these resources, your backups, your insights. So these are the capabilities which are coming with this particular virtual machine. Recommendations, your resources following Azure best practices. So no recommendation from Azure. Tutorial, how you can start this thing. Okay. So right now at the left side also, you will see a lot of settings regarding this virtual machine. Regarding your networking, connect, Windows admin, disk size, security, configuration, identity, locks, properties, Bastion, auto shutdown, right? Different functions are present at the left side for this particular machine. So right now what we will do, we will simply connect. And while creating this machine, we selected your RDP port. Okay. So we will go with the RDP. You can also select your SSH or your Bastion also, but we selected your RDP. So that is why we are going with RDP. So download your RDP file. Okay. Once your file is downloaded, open that particular file and you will see publisher of this remote connection can't be identified. Do you want to connect anyway? Since I know this is coming from Azure, so I will simply click on connect. Okay, now here enter your credentials. Here we have to enter the credentials which we gave for that machine. So what I will do, I will go with more choices, use a different account. Username we gave was cloud. Okay, now here you can see as soon as I connected this particular machine, I have been redirected to a virtual space. This is your cloud virtual space where your machine will be hosted. Okay, at the top you will see I'm getting option which is having the network info, your IP, if you want to minimize, maximize the screen or close this particular machine. Okay, so right now I am into my cloud interface which I created. Okay, so it will take around 20 to 50 seconds to load. Okay, your server manager, because we were hosting a Windows server. So this is regarding your server manager. Okay, so you can see I got a dashboard for my server manager. Now if you look at the basic configuration, that what space we are getting, whether it is matching the one which while according to our plan or not. So here let's go to this PC and space by default we are getting is 126 GB and temporary storage we are getting is around 64 GB. Okay, so around 200 gigs of space you are getting with this particular machine. Okay, so here what we will do, we will try to configure a ISS server. Okay, a Windows ISS server. So add roles and features, by default going with next, role based, and here you will select your web server, your IIS server for your Windows. What all frameworks you want on that particular server. So right now I'm going with by default only, right? I'm not making any changes, but according to your need you can change it over here. So by default going with your .NET framework only. Click on next and simply install it. So what is this particular thing is doing, it is installing this particular framework feature over my web server. So again it will take a minute or two to install all the features. All the things are getting installed on the data center. Okay, these things are not getting installed over your machine, these things are getting installed over the data center. So the region which we selected was East US. So the data center present at your East US, there we got one space for this particular machine, and at that space these all things are getting installed. Okay, once this thing gets completed we can access this particular IP over our web. But as in the starting, we did not set any rule for your HTTP, right? So we cannot access this IP outside this virtual machine. Okay, so we will see that thing. And once we do that, we will add one more rule that request coming from any source to this particular IP should be accepted in your inbound rule. So installation succeed. I will simply close this thing. Okay, so just let's open your Internet Explorer and let's try this thing, whether we got our Windows IIS server or not. So let it load for a minute. In the meantime, what we will do, we will change the security rule over here. Okay, if I go to networking, right now you will see only 4 rules are present over here. One is for the RDP, which we are using to make a connection over here. One is for your virtual network. One is for your Azure load balancer, and one is for other than all these things deny any inbound request coming to this particular IP. So what we will do, we will add one more inbound port rule, which is for your HTTP request on this particular IP. Okay, so source can be any, port range, it can be again star any, destination is any. Service, we will select your HTTP. So by default port 80 is assigned. Action allow priority 310 given. Name, let's give it HTTP. Okay, and description, if you want to give any, you can. And I'm simply adding a rule over here. So in the notification bar, you can see creating a new security rule for this particular VM. Once the rule is created, security rule created, and it is available over here. 310 HTTP port 80 protocol TCP. Now any request coming to this particular machine IP from any destination or any source, it should be allowed on this machine. Now let's see it over here. Installation is completed. Now here we can see one IIS server has been installed. So we'll again go to Internet Explorer and let's try localhost. Now you can see your web server has been hosted. Okay, and since we added a rule in your security part, so we can access that particular IP from here also. Okay, so IP is 2083. Right now I am in my base machine 181.193. 181.193. You can see this Windows server is hosted on this particular virtual machine, but I can access this thing over my browser also because I added a rule. If I remove this particular rule, right, if I remove this particular rule, let's say I delete this particular rule, delete security rule deleted. Okay, now if I try to access the same IP over my web browser, 2083, this one. Okay, it is coming. So let's refresh this machine. Okay, let's refresh this thing and let's start it again. Okay, so next time over your browser, you won't be able to access this particular machine. Okay, because there is no HTTP rule around here. Restart it. And also always remember, when you are not using your virtual machine, stop that particular machine, because if you don't stop your machine, your cost will be added. Okay, the time will be added for the uses. So whenever you're not using your machine, stop that thing so that you don't have to pay for that particular duration which for what you are not using. Now if I look at the monitoring part, for sure I will get some activities over here, right? I got some CPU activity, network activity, disk bytes, available memory bytes, disk operation, all the info is present over here. You can stop it. Once I do that thing, my machine will be stopped. You can even delete this part, right? This is one option, but if you want to, let's say, delete the resource group itself, so you can go on home, you can go for all your resource groups, and here you will see cloud bootcamp, the one which we created. and here delete resource group. All the resources present under this particular resource group will be deleted. Okay, so all you have to do is click on delete resource group, type the name of the resource group. For ourselves, we were having cloud bootcamp. So if I type cloud bootcamp, deleting resource group, cloud bootcamp. So once this thing is completed, my virtual machine will be deleted. The complete resource group will be deleted. So this is again with respect to your uses. If you don't want to use any machine, you can stop it. If you don't need that particular machine, you can simply delete that particular part also. Okay. Now all the things regarding your logs, workbooks, right? So let me close this thing. We are not deleting it as of now. Okay. So all the logs will be generated over here at this particular section. Welcome to log analytics. Right, you can select this particular, you can configure this log monitor, and according to your needs you can set rules over here. Right, we have diagnostic settings. These all are related to your monitoring part. Now here you have settings regarding your deployment, security, policies. You can set your own policies for this particular machine, right? Policies regarding your compliance for this particular cloud bootcamp resource group. Okay, other than that, if we go back, we have your tags. Tags are nothing but your short names for this particular virtual machine. Okay, the nicknames which we give to the people are same thing as tags which we are giving to these virtual machines. Okay, so you can give a nickname to this particular virtual machine also, so that when you want to search for a particular machine, okay, you can simply filter the name over here and it will be searched for you. So these things, this is what your tag is all about. You can do your access control, your IAM, who can access this particular machine, what all rules you can set over here, right? All the things are present over here. Activity log is also present, right? When this particular machine was last used, all those sort of things related to the activity on this particular machine. See, delete resource group, delocate virtual machine, all the things which were happening, I have a log for that particular part. Okay, so this is how you can create any resource over this particular Azure portal. All you need to do is get the knowledge that what type of resource you are creating. Okay, all you need to do is click on create. You can create anything. Okay, if I want to create a database, I can select database. I will get a lot of categories, and according to my need, if I want to search for more, I can go to the marketplace also. Right, I can search for a particular database over here also. Right, you can see I will get a lot of things over here, all databases. If I want to go with private products, no private products to display, so nothing as of now. If I want to go for AI ML category, I will get all the things, bot services, cognitive services, your NVIDIA is present, automated ML. Okay, all the things related to your AI ML. You can select a particular service. Let's say I selected this one. Okay, and I can subscribe to this particular service. So since I'm not having any infrastructure, so this service will of no use for me. Okay, so this is how you guys can create any virtual machine on this particular platform, which is your Azure.